And I think it's really important too, like what you're saying about, about the ways that we can take that understanding, right, and apply it to now, right? I mean, I don't know. I think about the people in my family, in my extended family, in my community, right? And I think that, like, that idea, right, that resistance doesn't look like one thing, that resistance can look like many things, right? Resistance can express itself in many ways, right, in your life. I think that enables me, I don't know, to like look at the people around me and to see resistance in their lives in the most like mundane of actions, right? Where it's I think about that phrase like Black joy is resistance, right? And I feel that, right? But I also think that, that Black parenting is resistance. I think that, Black kinship, that, creating different kinds of relationships and community. I think that's resistance, right? I think Black art is resistance, right? So like, I guess my experience of learning more about our past, I think enabled me to see our present, and the ways that, that we resist and push back against, all that, that is in opposition to us. I think that it just allowed me to, it empowered me in a way, I think. And, and you briefly said something about that earlier, right? That like learning about the past, it didn't depress you, right? That it empowered you in a way. And I feel like, I feel the same way, with a lot of the reading that I did, in order to write about chattel slavery, that it just allowed me to feel, more empowered. And it's one of the reasons why I feel like it's really important, because, sometimes people ask me about the book banning, yeah. Right? And that's one of those reasons that I always say, like, I know that, people don't necessarily, as we were talking about earlier, they don't want to engage with this all the time, right? And it is about finding a balance. But I think it is important for us to tell these stories so that they are accessible and so that they are there and so that, and so that we are very actively resisting that, I guess, the rewriting of our history, which, I mean, I am not a student of history in the way that you're a student of history, but from little that I know of history, like it seems like, that this has happened again and again and again and again, right? Like this push to rewrite our experience, our history from a different perspective, to sanitize it, to erase it, right? To have, the textbooks in, Florida and Texas, and them saying that we got, that enslaved people receive valuable life skills, right, from being enslaved, which is ridiculous, right? And so, I don't know. So I just, I think that I do struggle with it sometimes, right? Because I know, like, if I just relaxed a bit, if I wrote, stories that were maybe a little happier, not as, maybe perhaps not centered in the kinds of lives and realities that I write about, I could probably sell a lot more books. And I could probably reach a much wider audience, right? And I know there's a certain amount of resistance to my work because I write hard stories, uncomfortable stories, I guess. But I don't know, but this is what I'm called to do. Yeah, I don't know. That sort of went off on a tangent there.
No, I appreciate it. It's, it's interesting. I think Black joy is resistance. I think that illuminating, bringing attention to the ways in which Black people celebrate and love and laugh and live in all the ways that exist beyond the context of that which is attempting to inflict violence against us is profoundly important. I keep going back to this both and like that's my kind of ethos of all of this. Sometimes I do fear that there can be and trends and history is always something that swings back and forth. So I think that, we lived through the Black Lives Matter movement. We lived through, Trayvon Martin was killed in like 2012. Which is kind of the unofficial beginning of the incessant sort of viewing of and being proximate to and hearing of like Black people being killed at the hands of the state and vigilante. And I was like, and then we had George Floyd in 2020, and obviously all of the men and women and folks between that and there. And now we have the backlash to that period, in which, as you said, like state legislatures across the country are attempting to prevent teachers from teaching the very history that explains why the society looks the way that it does today. And I think that one of the downstream effects of the battle against like wokeism and the legislative battles and the book banning is that even people who are sympathetic to the things that we are writing about and thinking about, there almost can become a sort of weariness that they like. It is not the case that it is only like racist white people who are who don't want to engage with society. But I do think that it's an important distinction to be made between like Black people who are trying to moderate and be cognizant of how and when and to what extent they engage with that history. And though as a means of self-preservation, as a means of like being able to get up in the morning, as a means of not being overwhelmed by the violence that exists in the world and the violence that exists on our screens, in our books. So I want to put that here, say that that's one thing. And I get that. I don't want that to be an excuse for us not to engage with it. But like, if I don't expect people to, every time they sit down, watch like a Skip Gates documentary, or watch like, a movie about slavery or Eyes on the Prize. Like, you should also watch The Blind. You should also watch, whatever bingey Netflix, or Hulu thing. Because that's what I do. It's the same thing. So I want to put that there. That's one thing. But then I think the other part is like people who are attempting to prevent young people and people more broadly from having access to information that explains the sort of like political reality of the world that we live in today. And those, it might be two different groups of people who at different times are like not trying to watch Will Smith and Emancipation, but not for the same reason. So I think I want to say that. And then also on the Black joy piece, like I think there can be like an overly reductive way to think about Black joy, which suggests that because if everything is joy is resistance, then we're almost doing the opposite end of what we were doing before, which is like, if we're saying that like the only resistance in slavery that we were taught was like running away and having an uprising, and now we're like, well, joy is resistance. This is how I resist. I think that I just want to create space for us to say that is one mechanism by which we do resist, and it is one that has gone underappreciated, under discussed in the history of Black life. But I also do think that it can't only be joy is one form of resistance. And I don't want the pendulum to swing so far to the other side that we're not also conceiving of how resistance is other stuff. And that you can sort of like, that it's not these are not singular choices you have to make, right? It's not like I am a joy, rest is I am a rest is resistance person.
Right.
I am a joy is resistance person.
Right.
I am I'm watching
Right.
Eyes on the Prize every night. Like, hey,
Right.
we're people.
Right.
We're complicated people.
Right.
Just like the characters in your novels. And I just think that there has to be room for all of it. And I think that one of the things we don't do well as a country is like hold all of it.
Right.
And say yes to this and to this and to this. And we have to understand that there's a sort of balancing that looks different in different periods of your life, different times of your life. Some days you might wake up and you'd be like, I'm not in a place where I want to engage with this kind of thing. Maybe I don't read, Let Us Descend today. Maybe I'm going to go read, I don't know. I'm looking out and then all these things. King Cake. I'm going to read the big book of King Cake. I love King Cake.
Right.
So like some days you need the big book of King Cake. Right. Some days you need Let Us Descend.
Right.
And I think that it's okay to have both on your bookshelf and to have days where you pick one up and don't pick up the other.
Right.